All right, so we want to shift gears now. So today marks 2 years since Allisha Watts was last seen alive by her family in North Carolina. Her disappearance sparked an investigation that eventually resulted in the discovery of her body in a small town about 96 miles east of Charlotte more than a month later. I remember when we found the news. I was working in Raleigh at the time, and they sent me to Southern Pines, where she's from, her hometown. It was just very eerie in her neighborhood because she was well loved in that community, very active in her community, Allisha Watts. So yeah, our Jesse Pierre is covering the story. I'm kind of reminiscing right now and rambling about it, but it's one of those stories that you don't forget at all.
Yeah, no, that's very true, and just thinking of her, traveling to Charlotte to come see her boyfriend. They were supposed to go to a comedy show and then vanishes, right? And so you have family and friends worried, and I remember us getting emails from folks saying like, hey, you guys need to look into this, that she hasn't come back, or she didn't come to work, and etc. And then 2 days later, or a few days later, James Dunmore, he's the one who has been arrested and accused in her death and her murder. He was found unresponsive in her car.
Yeah.
And so that was odd, right? And then there was a couple of different twists and turns throughout this entire story. I know CMPD investigators also found like a shell casing outside of his home as well. And so they found her body, I think, a little more than a month later near a cemetery. I think it was in Montgomery County area. And the autopsy listed her death as undetermined, So just, again, as the family continues to fight for justice. Now, James Dunmore was arrested, so there's that. But then the case keeps being pushed back, and, they're just kind of waiting for, justice, right? And I spoke today to the family's pastor. He was a pastor to Allisha Watts, and I also briefly spoke to Allisha Watts' father, as well as a friend who helped in the search efforts. And for them, this is tough. It's 2 years that they're just kind of waiting to see what will happen. They don't want him to get off on any kind of ways. I know that his defense attorneys have filed some motions to get his the case dismissed and so forth, even though denied. These are just efforts that are closer to away from what they want, and at the end of the day, they want him fully prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. And although these things don't bring Allisha Watts back, at least that gives them a step closer to healing, to closing this chapter. You know what I mean? So, today we're just kind of, reflecting on the 2-year mark since she was last seen by her family, and just kind of, continuing to share light on this case. And I think one of the things that the family friend said is that this is another reminder, or another time to spread awareness about domestic violence as well, and they talked about, like you mentioned, that Allisha Watts was an advocate, a strong member in her community,
involved
and so
in
forth,
every single
involved in
thing,
a lot of different things, and so forth. So this was a tragic way to lose her, and they just want to make sure that this doesn't happen to anybody else.
Did you feel the heaviness? Because obviously I felt it like right after they found her body, but 2 years later, like in those conversations, does it still feel heavy?
Especially when I spoke to the pastor. He was my first interview today, and he says like it still feels fresh, like the way, and he was so like, you can feel the emotions in his voice, you know what I mean? And especially when you have a young woman who is, doing the right things, right? And then to be taken so tragically in such a violent way, and there's so many questions, right? Why did this happen? And so all of these things just kind of, prevent the family to really fully heal, And even I asked her father, what if he could face James Dunmore today, what would he ask him? He said the same thing. Why did you do this? She had a good life. She had good things going. Why would you do this to her? And I also asked him, what would he say to his daughter? And he said he always told her he loved her, and he would tell her again, I love you.
Before I get you out of here, you've been so generous with your time, and I know you're busy. You got a lot to kind of filter through as far as information-wise and putting the story together. What do you remember from the day when they found Allisha Watts? Because I just remember, so that part of of where she was found, and then her hometown is kind of like all the TV stations in North Carolina kind of meet at that market. We all kind of overlap in that area, so we all were there.
Yeah.
And I just remember the newsroom in Raleigh was chaotic. But what was it like here, and what was your day like? Were you covering that story at all?
Not on the day that
Okay.
she was discovered. I do remember several times when I've come to the home, outside
Yeah.
of his home and so forth, and this is when she was, first
Mm-hmm.
missing and so forth. And then I remember when he was found in her car.
Yeah.
And so it's like all these things are like not adding up. What's going
Yeah.
on? So there's just a lot of questions. But then, you still have a little hope that she's found alive, right? Or
Mm-hmm.
safe or something. So I think that just at the end of the day, when I hear this story 2 years later, it's just sad. A young woman lost her life in a violent way. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so that's my connection to it, and just that it's just a sad ending. And I don't know if, families ever really move on from that,
Yeah, that's a hard one. Yeah, Jesse Pierre, when can folks? I know you said 4:00. But
Yes, I'm 4 o'clock and 5 o'clock today, so you'll see the story there, and then we'll have a lot more online.
Yeah,
because
yeah.
those were long interviews for sure. So.
It's a lot of moving parts with the story, and a lot of developments, and a lot happening with the story. So again, Jesse, thank you for your time. Thank you for
course.
stopping by the studio.